Happy Monday, Year 6. So this is your reading lesson for today. Now, over the course of the week, we're going to be asking you to practice your comprehension skills. That means your understanding skills. That means answering questions about the text. But also your reading aloud skills. We're going to be hearing you read for fluency. And that's about expression. It's about reading the text in a way that makes it exciting for the audience and to help the audience understand what's going on in the text. It's all about looking for punctuation marks as well. So remembering to pause when you see a full stop. Sometimes that means that when you are reading aloud, you have to read in your head first. So read a little bit ahead to see what's coming up before you read out loud to make sure that you get the full meaning and expression of that line out. This lesson is all about those comprehension skills. You're going to be watching this video, spending 30 minutes reading whatever you like. You can do this in your head or out loud. That's absolutely up to you. Reading out loud for 30 minutes is very tiring, so I wouldn't recommend doing the whole 30 minutes out loud. But reading out loud is good practice, so you could read some. Then you're going to answer questions on the Google Doc and hand in your work. Your reading test will test whether you can find information from the text. We call that retrieving information. Working out the meaning of words, using the text to help you, so within context. And talking about authors' choices. So that includes sometimes specific things about language. So it might be about what metaphor does the author use, or what verb does the author use, or how do they describe the atmosphere? How do they make you scared of something? How does the author make us want to know more? And specifically pulling out examples from the text. Or it might be how they describe a character. It might be how they choose to start a sentence. So author's choices is quite a broad category. We're going to practice some of these skills. This is a passage from Friend or Foe. You might have read it before. It's from chapter 7. And you're going to look for a word that means thought in this passage. "You will look after him, please," he said. "He needs a doctor. You will make sure he has a doctor." "Course we will," Tucky said excitedly. "Course we will, won't we, Davy?" David nodded his agreement. "So he's your prisoner now." And he felt deep into the inside of his coat and pulled out the black revolver. "You will need this," he said, handing it to David. It was cold and heavy, heavier than David had imagined. "It is loaded, but the safety catch is on. Be careful with it, please." David balanced it in his hand and gripped the butt, his finger curling around the trigger. "I could make you come too," he said. "Of course, Davy," the man nodded, "but friends do not use guns on each other." So what word in here means thought? Let's see if we can find a word that means thought. So thought is a verb. We're looking for a doing word. He says that out loud, so it's not he said. We've got said again, said again. Heavier than David had imagined. Heavier than David had thought. Yes, that word, imagined. So the word that also means thought is imagined. So we're going to read this passage. You're going to read it to yourself and look for a word that means held tightly. Now, when it says held tightly, I'm thinking he's going to be holding something. So I'm going to look for the bit where they talk about the gun. So he is your prisoner now, and he felt deep inside the inside of his coat and pulled out the black revolver. "You will need this," he said, handing it to David. It was cold and heavier than David had imagined. "It is loaded, but the safety catch is on. Be careful with it, please." David balanced it in his hand and gripped the butt, his finger curling around the trigger. Gripped the butt. I'm imagining that. And in my head, I know that means held tightly. That's kind of what you would do if you were given something so dangerous. You'd hold on to it. You wouldn't want to drop that, especially if you knew it was loaded. So how does Tucky feel when he's told the man needs a doctor? So now we're going to have to retrieve some information from the text because I think it tells us how he feels. Sometimes questions like this mean that you are literally going to find out from the text. It's going to tell us. But sometimes when it says feel, it means that we're going to have to infer. So we're going to first test if it actually tells us. Ooh, he's told the man he's a doctor, and Tucky says it excitedly, that adverb. Now that is a feeling. I know how he feels. He says it excitedly, so I would say he feels excited. What colour is the revolver? Who can spot that? I think it does describe it. We're literally taking this from the text. We don't have to infer or guess anything. It is a black revolver. How does the man feel about Davy? So I'm going to see if he literally tells us about Davy. The man talks here. He's talking mostly to Tucky. Then he hands a revolver to David. So I think he must trust him. I can infer, I can guess he must trust him. My answer would be the man trusts Davy because he hands a revolver which is loaded and it's very dangerous to Davy. So I could say he trusts him. And then the man says, but friends do not use guns on each other. So I can also use that as evidence. I think he believes that Davy is his friend. He refers to him as his friend. There's some evidence from the text. Now, some of that we could just find, and some of it we had to infer. So when we guessed that he trusted Davy because he handed him the revolver. What do you think? Has Davy held a gun before? This one we really are going to have to infer because I know it doesn't tell us in this. It doesn't say Davy had never held a gun before. So we'll have a look. It was cold and heavy, heavier than David had imagined. So I think he has not held a gun before because he has to imagine, he has imagined what it would be like. So I'm going to guess that he hasn't held a gun before. What do you think loaded means in this context? Loaded means lots and lots of different things. You might have heard loaded in different ways, different contexts, but here it says, it is loaded, but the safety catch is on. So what does it mean? The gun is loaded. The gun, does it have bullets in or does it not? Yeah, in this case, it does. Otherwise, you wouldn't need the safety catch. How does the author help us feel Davy and Tucky's excitement about the situation? So first of all, we use the adverb excitedly. So we know that Tucky is excited because it actually says that he's excited. And that's the way he speaks. But here, Davy says, I could make you come too. And he's holding on to the gun and he's got his finger on the trigger. So I would suggest that he is feeling quite powerful about the situation. He's maybe a mixture of excited, little bit frightened. There's a lot going on in this situation. They feel trusted as well. This is they feel very responsible for this man. So throughout this passage, how does the author create tension? What does that mean? It means what I just described, that there's lots of different emotions, that it makes us think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We don't know what Davy's going to do. We don't know what's going to happen to this man, but it makes us care about that. It makes us care about the characters, it makes us want to know what happens, and we don't know what's going to happen. So tension is like a mixture of atmospheres or emotions, like tense, very tight. Now I can see a few different things in here. First of all, the man needs a doctor. If a man needs a doctor, that means something has happened. It means that it's a situation that is time sensitive. He must get to a doctor. He probably has to do it soon. We use the word prisoner. Oh my. So he needs to go to a doctor, but he can't be let go by himself. He can't be trusted. So these children are going to have this prisoner and look after him and take him to a doctor. But they still have to keep him prisoner. So there's the tension there. There's a revolver. physically got hold of a revolver, a gun in this situation. They describe the gun. It's not just speech. There's a description in here. He reached inside the inside of his coat and pulled out a black revolver. It doesn't just say, gave him a gun. It breaks it down, describes it slowly, or the actions, the way the gun feels. Again, what does David do? Before he speaks, we have slowing down. We have David balanced it in his hand and gripped the butt, his finger curling around the trigger. It's a bit of description about what he's doing before he speaks. Then we have that tension. I could make you come too. Are they going to fall out? What's he going to do with the gun? And then at the end, the man nods and says, but friends do not use guns on each other. And what's the purpose of that line? What does that do to the tension? Here's some vocabulary that I have used. Tension, we said that's about making it tight, creating some suspense, having more than one atmosphere and not being quite sure of what's going to happen. Atmosphere, that's the mood and the feelings in the text. Suspense, suspense is making you want to know more and you're not quite sure what's going to happen. The author is the writer. Evidence means you have to find it in the text to say why you think something. So in this case, evidence, we know that Tucky is excited. It says he says it excitedly. So that's finding evidence in the text. It says to support your opinions. So support in this is to back up, to hold up your opinions, to make them more, to make us trust your opinions, to make us believe them. And a passage is a piece of text. So these are the questions you're going to have on your Google Doc about the book you're reading. Who is the main character in your book? Give 2 facts about the character. Now, facts are, what does the author say about the character? What do we know? We're not guessing. We know it because the author told us. And then what is your opinion of the character? What do you think of them? And what makes you think this? This is where we're using evidence from the text to support your answer. So here's my examples for that passage. The main characters are David and Tucky. I know that Davy gets given a gun to hold. That's a fact. And Tucky is excited about the situation. I know that because he says it excitedly. My opinion of the characters. So I think Davy feels powerful when he's given the gun. And I think this because he points it at the man and says he could make the man come too. So he's displaying that he is feeling quite powerful with a gun in his hand.